Erev Tov Hoda Sharon. Good morning in Atlanta, where one of our panelists today made a day trip for a competition yesterday. Sit tight, find out which one on the panel that was. Greetings, my name is Wayne Firestone. I'm the Executive Director of the America-Israel Friendship League. It's great to be with you this weekend. Look, this was a tough weekend yesterday, commemorating 9/11. We all have memories that are deep about that historic moment and our own ways of getting over it. Here at America-Israel Friendship League, we celebrate when we come together. And that's what friends are for. And you need friends in hard times. You need friends in celebratory times. And what better way to really explore that today with an international sports competition whose name is synonymous with friendship and overcoming obstacles and bringing people together. And that's the Maccabia, and it's coming. And there are people prepping for it. So get ready. We've got some exciting headlines and insights about the Maccabia in Israel, summer 2022. Before we get there, we want to ask everyone out there who's joining us live now, whether it's on Zoom or on Facebook, tell us the last time that you were at an international sports competition in person. Could be any sport. When do you remember being there? Put something in the chat about where you were, what sport that was, what kind of memories of adrenaline and excitement and competition that sort of brought you to the sense that there's nothing like it. There's nothing like actually being there. Whether you win, whether you lose, you got to be there. You got to show up, because that's one of the pieces we celebrate with our partner here today, Maccabi USA, which has been through so much of the history of Jewish athletics from before the state of Israel and after the state of Israel, and is so connected to places that many of us have visited and loved, like Kfar Maccabia. And we're going to hear about that today. So let me briefly introduce our panelists today, just so you have a sense of who you're going to hear from and some of the images that we'll be looking at. We have Brian Schiff, who's normally in Philadelphia. Today he's on the West Coast. He travels around a lot. He wears multiple hats and multiple kippot and multiple helmets. He's been an athlete dating back to the Maccabia back in 2001, for those of you who are old enough to remember that, where he was a competitor and has been a judo coach. He's on the professional staff of Maccabi USA. He's an athlete, a coach, a manager, a team manager in multiple sports, and also plays a role of commissioner for the sports league as they're moving forward for the Maccabi games. We have with us, fresh off the boat, literally practically just got out of Ben Gurion Airport, is still technically in quarantine. We're so grateful to have her in whatever time zone her body is telling us. Libby Zelkowitz, who participated in the 2017 Maccabia. She got to know Israel a little bit. Israel got to know her a little bit. And lo and behold, she's now a player for the national team in Israel in what we call in the United States soccer. The rest of the world calls football. Libby, will hear how you translate back and forth on what that is. We're so excited for you and to hear about your journey from being a participant and sort of seeing this on both sides of the ocean, and particularly now that you've just arrived for your own competition with the Israeli team. We're really looking forward to hearing about that. And now there's this other thing that people do with the football that Americans are always a little bit uncertain about, but at least two generations of the Rozinski family from Boston are able to have some bragging rights about this. We've got Michael Rozinski, who he himself is a medalist from 2017 in the Maccabi games. And if I understand correctly, part of a team gold medal, in addition to other medals that he's received. But he also has the distinction in the Maccabi lore of being a legacy. And I think maybe the only legacy of a father-son who have both competed and won medals in the same sport of rugby. So for some of us, you're going to teach us a little bit of what the heck rugby is. And for the rest of us that actually understand why you're wearing a Patriots hat and talking to us about rugby, how it's possible to love footballs of different shapes and fields of different sizes. And the man who has brought all of these great athletes, coaches, and participants together today is our colleague, Dan Kurtz, and he's in the City of Love, spreading the love of this sport from Philadelphia and around the country today. We're literally covering from California to Tel Aviv with our participants. Dan Kurtz, he's the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives to Maccabi USA. We're so grateful, Dan, for your to help put this together. We know this is sort of an in-between time for those in the Jewish holidays. This is a reflective period for those in the sporting world. We just finished with the Olympics. Do we have to wait 4 years to be excited about the next big international competition? Or maybe is there something that we can be looking forward to in Israel that you can give us a sneak peek preview for today?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Wayne. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's great to have such an international audience. So, in fact, we do have something that's very excited that we're very excited that we're looking forward to. And after an unprecedented interruption in the Maccabia, for 71 years since World War II, the Maccabia had happened on schedule every 4 years without interruption. And due to COVID, the Maccabia scheduled for the summer of 2021 was pushed back into the summer of 2022. And so we at Maccabi USA are very excited to be moving forward with all of our preparations. It's ever changing. The protocols vary from day to day, event to event, tryout to tryout. But we're very excited to say that in July of 2022, that Maccabi USA will be taking a delegation of approximately 1,250 athletes to Israel to compete in what we hope will be the largest Maccabia ever. And that's the Maccabia. We're very excited about that. To give a little context about Maccabi USA, we are the official territorial organization of the global Maccabi movement in the United States. Our sanctioning body is Maccabi World Union. Their headquarters is in Ramat Gan, in Israel, just outside of Tel Aviv, and we are an affiliate of the United States Olympic Committee. Our primary mission is to organize delegations for international sporting events for Jewish athletes, including the European Maccabi Games, the Pan American Maccabi Games, and most importantly, our biggest event, the Maccabia. Lately, we do have a growing domestic focus. We're trying to use our alumni partnerships and join with other Jewish organizations to leverage the community that we build at the Games to grow community in the United States. And rather than talk about all that we're doing, I'd like to share a sneak preview of a new mini documentary about Maccabi USA and the history of the American participation in the Maccabia going back to 1932 at the first Games that will be premiering hopefully in December at the opening of a new global Maccabi museum on the campus of Kfar Maccabia, the Maccabi village.
See this video? Okay.
Sports transforms lives. Preparation, dedication, teamwork, triumph, resilience. Those who have set their sights on elite athletic competition carry that treasure with them for the rest of their lives. And when their journeys merge with the strength and future of Israel, these athletes become part of a sacred chain spanning more than 3,000 years. The mission of Maccabi USA, building Jewish pride through sports, was seeded in Europe in the late 19th century. The Maccabi clubs and their premise to create a Muskeljudentum, or muscular Jewry, spread across Turkey, Poland, Czechoslovakia, even Russia. Whether the clubs were born from outright anti-Semitism or Jewish pride, the message has remained ironclad. We are stronger when we are together. Mere weeks after Israel's birth in 1948, Maccabi USA's first incarnation was founded, the United States Committee Sports for Israel. Its primary goal, to join with Maccabi World Union and assure the new country's qualification in the Olympic Games. In the short span of 4 years, the dream of global athletic recognition was achieved when Israel competed in the 1952 Summer Games in Helsinki, Finland. Maccabi USA's vital history was just beginning. Its sun and moon would always be the Maccabia, held every 4 years in Israel, with the European and Pan American Maccabi Games as their exciting counterparts. Jerusalem and American Jewry are separated by 6,000 miles. The fiber and sinew of sport close the gap. History doesn't stand still. Savage threats to the Jewish people didn't end with the liberation of the Nazi camps, nor with the birth of Israel or its eventual emergence as a 21st century global leader. Wherever the Star of David is flown, there are enemies who wish to tear it down. At the 1972 Summer Olympic Games in Munich, Germany, Maccabi USA alumnus David Berger was one of 11 athletes representing Israel to be taken hostage and murdered by Arab terrorists. He had moved to Israel just after winning a gold medal at the '67 Maccabia. In 2001, amidst the Second Intifada and a terrorist attack at the Dolphinarium, that summer's Maccabia was in jeopardy. Maccabi USA committed to the Games with a juggernaut of athletes and infrastructure, and the Games were a resounding success. Through trials and triumph both, Maccabi USA stands with Israel. It would be easy to measure Maccabi USA's success by its number of participants alone, in 2017 sending the largest traveling delegation in history to a multi-sport event. But elite competition is only one facet of our strength. Israel Connect, a 6-day cultural educational experience, is a Maccabi USA cornerstone. Whether it's working with children with disabilities or visiting active duty soldiers, IC gives our athletes the opportunity to engage Israelis heart to heart. Israel Connect is one with the Games themselves, now encompassing 44 sports, including Paralympic teams. For the athletes who spend 3 weeks in Israel to train, learn, tour, and compete together, many visiting Israel for the first time, it is life-transforming.
So for those of you who would like to see the complete documentary, I invite you to join us in Israel in 2022 for the Maccabia and to visit the museum and see our complete history of Maccabi USA and our global Maccabi movement.
Dan, thanks so much for that introduction and the sneak preview of first of all, just telling us about this museum that will be opening as part of the next Maccabia in Israel. It's really an incredibly powerful. Just looking at some of those images is really stirring of the history and the importance of this on many levels. Brian, I know for you, you've been a part of that history. You've been a part of this as a competitor, as a coach, as now with the staff from and working on both sides of the ocean for this. So can you share with us a little bit about some of your own reflections from your journey as an athlete and coach to now working with athletes? And a little bit of a peek looking forward to what we can expect in 2022. And just a reminder to unmute your phone there. There we go.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Dan. And thank you to the Israel-America Friendship League. This is a great thing you're all doing. And welcome to everybody around the world, I guess. Yes, I consider outside of my family, the most blessed part of my life is that I got involved with Maccabi USA in 1998. And yes, I've been to the Maccabia in Israel 4 times, but also as shown in that video, I also have been at the Pan Am Games in Mexico City, in Santiago, Chile, and in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and at the European Maccabi Games in 2015 in Berlin, Germany. They all have their own challenges, getting teams together, getting people together. For Israel, we always have tryouts. For the other events, we generally don't. We usually then have people just apply, and then they have to give recommendations, and we talk to coaches and look at videos and all those type of things. I was the coach of the USA junior boys basketball team for all those 8 times. We did have incredible success on and off the court. I've met so many great people. People have said to me, I've had a really positive impact on so many, but I always say the impact on me is tenfold to what I've ever, theoretically been able to do for anybody else. Now I'm involved with more in the management side, and yes, COVID has wreaked havoc on everything in the world, not just this, of course, from, the games being pushed back a year to the millions of different protocols and procedures that we have to go through at all the tryouts. So in the last month, I'd say, let me go back about 6 months ago, we had meetings where we said it didn't look like we would have any tryouts, that we were going to do like we did with Pan Am and with Europe, and sort of just name teams for after applications. But as things sort of seemed to have gotten better for a while, we decided we could have tryouts. So in the last month, I was at the tryouts for the Open men's team, which is college players and above, which was a great weekend at Duke University in North Carolina. Then I was in Boston for the women's open tryout also, which took place at Brandeis. And by the way, my daughter lives in Boston and works for the Boston Red Sox, so I got to see her, who I hadn't seen because of COVID for a long time. And that was really special too, and was able to go there with my wife, Susan. And we had a great time visiting her and going to the tryouts. And then I actually work these days at a school called Abington Friends in a Philadelphia suburb. And we had the tryouts for the 18 and under and 16 and under boys and girls at the school I work at 2 or 3 weeks ago. And that had its own set of challenges. I mean, normally we would have parents there. They couldn't come. Kids had to show vaccination cards. We had to have protocols, masks, everything that everybody needs to go through. So the challenges are enormous, but as Dan said, we are planning on going. We're doing the best we can to be as safe as we can for everybody, and looking forward to the games kicking butt in 2022, next year in Jerusalem, as we've been known to say.
Thanks, Brian. And let me translate that for some of our crowd. That means kicking tuchus, and that means that everybody sort of rises in these competitions. Libby, when you headed over to the Maccabi games in 2017, what was on your mind? Did you imagine yourself one day playing for Israel? And tell us about that journey.
Definitely, for sure. Hi, guys. Thank you for having me. My name is Libby Zalkowitz. I'm 26 years old. And as they mentioned, I'm currently living in Tel Aviv. And if you guys can share a mini clip of me playing this past season, it was definitely a challenge, but you can see a little bit of it for yourself. A few goals I scored. For me, heading into the Maccabi games, I honestly had no idea what to expect. I just only heard about great things about it. I was very nervous. It was right after my senior year in college at Mercy College, where I played Division II soccer. And it was that time period where like athletes, we get nervous, our career is coming to an end. But I definitely had this amazing goal in front of me, which was the Maccabi games. I immediately hired a personal coach, private coach, where I could start training for it. Got into CrossFit, where I needed to get stronger for the games, and I didn't know what to expect, and not really knowing the girls too much. We get to Israel, we land in Israel. I'll never forget just coming into the farm Maccabia that we previously mentioned. I found myself in heaven. We had 2-3 weeks of training before the Maccabi games where we all bonded, just athletes from every sport in the US coming together. We had the same jokes. We had so much in common with our beliefs, and then also how we viewed sports and how seriously we took it. And it was something that I never really experienced before, where everything kind of came together. And I really fell in love with the whole experience, and it just got better after that. We then moved into Jerusalem, where we got ready to start the Maccabia, and we were just in a hotel filled with athletes from all over the world, soccer players from everywhere, and we all just instantly bonded, whether we were competition or not. And I'm still in touch with a lot of my friends. Actually, here in Israel, last year I was rooming with two Maccabi game players that I met during the season, during my experience there. Stayed in touch with so many, and I've definitely made friends for a lifetime. Since then, I moved to Israel. I made Aliyah. I joined the army. I did 2 years of service in a combat unit called Karakal. After that, I decided to continue playing soccer. I joined the Premier League here. I played with Asa Tel Aviv for a season. Unfortunately, we got cut short because of COVID. No one really knew what to expect. It was a difficult time for all athletes. As we know, coming back from such a long break, we see in the Olympics this year, it's been a struggle for athletes, not only physically to stay in shape, but also mentally to stay strong and keep your eye on the prize when everything is so up in the air. And definitely, I feel like the Maccabia even helped me with that, because it taught me how to train on my own also, and prepared me for the upcoming challenges for the next season, which is what you guys saw, which was the 2021 season. It was an amazing season. I played with Netanya. It was also very difficult dealing with the COVID. No one knew when the games were, and when there were games, they were all piled on top of each other. But preparing for that season, I did a lot of training on my own, and not only physically, I also did a lot of mental training on my own. I also was working with the sports psychologist to really stay focused. And yeah, this season actually we faced a whole nother challenge of the Rockets, which also ended our season a little bit earlier than usual. But it was another challenge we had to face, and we overcame it. We ended up finishing the season. And now I'm preparing for the upcoming season. I will be playing for Maccabi, which is also in the Premier League, and the national team. We are preparing for the Women's World Cup qualifiers. So yeah.
Wow, that is a lot of activity. And
sorry if I was.
No, that's just taking it all in. That journey compressed. You've certainly accomplished a great deal. And you've raised a number of topics I want to explore a little bit further in our discussion as well. Thanks for being with us. If you need to have some extra coffee, apparently Michael has been drinking coffee since the beginning of the morning. Spoiler alert, he is the one who was in Atlanta yesterday. Michael, tell us why you were in Atlanta and what you were doing, and why you're back for game day in Boston.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. So my name is Michael Rozinski. I'm 28 years old, out of Boston, Massachusetts. Reason I was in Atlanta yesterday, I was playing a rugby match against Life University. I play for a men's Division I club up here, based out of Malden, Massachusetts, called Mystic River Rugby Club. I grew up around rugby. It's been a part of my life since I was born. My father started playing when he was in college at the University of Rhode Island, and he fell in love with the sport, and for great reason, because, in our opinion, it's the best sport in the world, but no offense to anyone else. But no, what it does, it really just brings out a lot of camaraderie, and it's a brotherhood in many senses, and sisterhood, across the world. And it's a sport that's continuing to grow and teach, life lessons, teamwork, sportsmanship, how to have fun, and, not always take yourselves too seriously, although we do a lot of that as well, when we're between the lines, of course. So I was at Life University playing yesterday against their men's club team. And yeah, it was a long day. It was, up at 4 a.m., get the flight get to the airport at 5:30, got back around 11:30 last night in Boston. So Definitely got my 8 hours, but it wasn't quite enough after the physicality that we went through yesterday. But yeah, that being said, a little bit about my Maccabia background. So I started, like I said, in the rugby world from, just being a little toddler at the pitch, on the sidelines, sitting on, rugby ball, watching my father play, started, what we call touch judging, running the sidelines with the flag, doing that at the age of 7, actually, maybe even 6. It was the point where I was holding up a flag on the sideline, and the players that were on the pitch, they actually couldn't even really see me sometimes. They're wondering, where's the flag? So my little arms in the background holding it up, and they're saying, where is he? And I popped up there. But beyond that, then I knew I wanted to play. I grew up playing all types of sports: football, hockey, basketball, baseball, lacrosse, you name it. Probably touched it at some point. So rugby was something that, again, was near and dear to my heart, something I grew up with. And when I was around 10, 11 years old, even 12, I had been in my father's ear and was saying, hey, let's start a team. I want to play. And we started a youth team. And from there, it just continued to grow. So we started Mystic River Youth Rugby Club, Mystic River Youth Rugby Program, I should say. And we started with, probably around 15 people that first summer, give or take, and not all 15 were showing up every night. So, we're having nights of 7 people down. We're just teaching the basics of rugby with flags. And beyond that, now we're 15 years later, 16 if you include the year of COVID. We're kind of, taking that year out of it. And we now have over 200 kids, ages 5 to 19. So flag, middle school tackle, high school tackle, and beyond. So with that, I was, always amazed by my father's mettle. And, we would go up to the attic on, rainy Saturdays and go through, some of his sports memorabilia, because he's always been a sports fan. And, he would pull out that, his mementos, whether it was pictures, whether it was tickets, all types of stuff. But he would always pull out that 1989 13th Maccabia bronze medal. And I was just in awe of it. And from a very young age, I knew that I wanted to be a part of Maccabi USA. So fast forward, 18, 19 years, went to University of South Carolina, was down there for a year and a half, had been playing men's rugby for a few years at that point, a little bit of U19 rugby. Again, my father and I had started that, program here. So, I was really kind of sinking my teeth into the rugby world. And I actually had a chance to play with the Maccabi USA rugby team at a tournament in Florida. It was my real introduction to the Maccabi USA rugby family. And it was a social tournament, but I got to play with some of the guys that were in Israel in 2009 in what would have been the 18th Maccabia. And so I got, a kind of introduction there at a young age, and then knew for sure that the next games I was going to be there. I was going to try out and, work my tail off and get there. And, a lot of hard work. And like I said, I was at college, so skipped, quite a few parties and things like that, and managed to get in the best shape of my life. And we went to Israel for the 19th Maccabia out in Israel. And I was the youngest on the team, 20 years old. It was a rigorous training process. We trained with the Navy SEALs one day out at Coronado Beach. And we also trained at the Olympic Training Center. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. Just hands down, couldn't have come together with a greater group of brothers. And, while the result wasn't exactly what we were hoping for, it was one of the best months ever. Going to Israel, experiencing all that the culture had to offer, and doing it again, like I said, with an amazing group of people, and of course, fantastic leadership in the Maccabi USA folks. So again, went there. We won a sevens gold, but I wasn't on that team. I was kind of one of those last cuts, an alternate, so to speak. And the 15s team, which again, there's 2 different kinds of rugby. 15s and sevens. Sevens is a lot quicker, fast paced. 15s is more of like a poetry in motion. It's more of playing chess than checkers. And I didn't make the sevens team, but we try out for the 15s team as a whole, and we won a bronze, which was great again. So I had a bronze to match my father. became the first, Maccabi USA rugby legacy. But again, knew my job wasn't done, knew my legacy wasn't stopping there. So 4 years go by, and we knew 2017 that we were going with a different objective. And, we came out with a gold in the 15s rugby, which was, all that we could have hoped for. It was the first gold for Maccabi USA rugby since 1997. So we did it 20 years later. It was pretty special, and, pretty special to join that family and be a part of that family, and have those guys from 97 reach out to you and, congratulate you and be, as happy about it as you were. So Maccabi USA has always, been something near and dear to my heart. And, now I'm like I said, I'm 28, so I'm kind of nearing the end of my elite sports performance era, but transitioning into a coaching and refereeing side of things. But before I do that, I want to make it back over there for next summer and bring home 2 golds this time around.
It's great to see that competitive spirit in all of your voices, as well as community spirit. And Dan, one of the very first questions that we got is about age. We many of us, and when we first started this conversation with your colleague Marshall and your Shaliach Shachar, it was during the Olympics, and it, the announcers would say someone who was maybe 30 years old was, sort of at the very end of their Olympic possibilities. Can you tell us and explain a little bit about the age range, the different categories that people are competing in? I don't think that's common knowledge for most how this works, and it's not only people in college and Division I or II schools, et cetera.
Sure. So we're really proud of the diversity that Maccabi USA brings and that the Maccabia represents amongst the global Jewish community. So we have U16, under 16-year-old divisions. They generally are ages between 14 and 16 years old. We have a U18 division. And then we have our open division, which is the sort of the elite of the elite. All our U16 and U18 are competitively chosen. There were over 100 young athletes trying out, for example, for the U18 boys soccer team. There were tryouts held on the East Coast and the West Coast with supplemental tryouts and video, and 20 were appointed. So it's a very competitive process to make any of our teams, but in particular our open team. No less competitive, although perhaps as someone who won a medal in a master's level category, no less competitive, but perhaps a little bit slower paced are our master's divisions. We offer master's opportunities in ages 35 plus, 45 plus, 55 plus men's soccer. And then in sports like tennis, squash, and golf, there are grandmasters going all the way up. We have competitors sometimes in their 80s. So we like to say 14 to 84, we have a spot for you. If you're competitive, if you're wanting to travel and meet and compete against your peers globally and represent the US in Israel, look us up. We have a spot.
14 to 84, that's quite a demographic and one to be proud of. I want to turn to the 3 other panelists now. There was something that each of you said that sort of grabbed me in your introductions about training, and in particular training over this past year and a half. Libby, I want to start with you. In that amazing narrative of obstacles, I would say, that you had to overcome, including missiles falling in the middle of your season to shutdowns for COVID. You mentioned something that we talked a little bit about previously about the psychological athlete aspects of preparation for athletes. And I think certainly at the Olympics this year, there was a breakthrough that some athletes actually began to talk openly in a way that we've never heard before about some of those psychological stresses and challenges. And I know you as a trainer and as a competitor you've experienced this with your own colleagues and for yourself. And I wonder if you could share what you've learned from this past year and how we're talking about this differently, or how at least athletes are finding that they need to be able to talk about this and not only the physical aspects of their training.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important that we do discuss the mental aspect of it, because that's, most people would say would be most of the game. It's take place in your head. Yes, we all know how to physically train, but at the end of the day, we're playing the sport in our head. We're analyzing things. We're communicating with people. It's a team sport, and a lot of it. And there's a lot of an emotional aspect to the sport as well. What drives us? What motivates us? What holds us back? What distracts us? Personally, for myself, going into at the beginning of the pandemic, I'll never forget, I was on full on panic mode. And as a short, I'm sure a lot of athletes we're not homebodies. We like to be out. We like to be playing a sport. We like to be meeting people. We like to be competing against each other. And for me, I was definitely well, this is going to be a whole nother survival of the fittest. It's going to be, how strong are you mentally to survive this new obstacle that we're going to have in our hands. And I'm a personal trainer too, on the side of everything. And I was talking to my friends and some of my clients about it. And I felt the stress of the mental stress of it, of not being able to train. And so what I did was I formed a community of athletes here in Israel. I called it Zelly Fit. And basically what we did was we met up on occasion. We trained on the beach in an open space. We did a lot of rope work, a lot of agility work. And it was great to see that it would helped everyone in that community come together, and whether it was hard or not, it was something to look forward to, something we all love to do. And it created a bond and a community, and a space for people to kind of talk about their struggles, because as we know, in athletes, we're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to be game face on, always ready for competition. We're fierce. And when you take a year off of that consistency training that I know since I was young, every day practice once or twice a day, to being on my own, it definitely takes a drawback and you're kind of left in your head. But I think a lot of professional athletes that we saw in the Olympics came forward and talked about it. We have Simone Biles, we have Naomi Osaka, we've had Michael Phelps in the past, we have Kevin Love, we have a lot of people coming forward to discuss these very important topics. And what I would say to athletes is, it's okay not to always be strong. It's okay to have your doubts, whether you want to do a sport or not. A lot of athletes are taking an extra break from it. But if you're ever having doubts, I would say talk to somebody about it, and come forward and be open to whatever you're going through.
Michael, I saw you're shaking your head in affirmation as Libby was talking. The stereotype of a rugby player from New England is, not necessarily doing yoga on the beach in Tel Aviv. What have you seen among your rugby colleagues and yourself during this period about, fear and anxiety and uncertainty that you can't just run out and pretend this is not happening? How has that affected training? How's it affected the competition? And what ways do you think it will impact on the coming year of competition?
Yeah, well, firstly, I think Libby said it, beautifully. And, don't doubt the rugby players. We still like yoga occasionally from time to time. No, we need to limber up a little bit, with all the, bumps and bruises that we take.
I just don't know what goes on in those huddles, so it's hard to know if you could what you guys are discussing.
Oh, the scrums. Well, those are different. We're fighting for possession of the ball in those, but that's
okay. That's different. Okay.
So, yeah, this last year, especially year and a half, really has taken a toll on everyone, and everyone's dealing with it differently and different degrees of how people are feeling. Like Libby said, it's okay to not be okay and to be uncomfortable in those scenarios. So speaking, and I've done a lot of self-reflection over the last year and a half, a lot, notebook filled. So it's one of those things that before the pandemic hit, I wasn't really as active with it. I was here and there occasional, let me, write some affirmations. Let me write some things that, I want to do today. Let me, just track, kind of daily journaling and whatnot, but I didn't really have a purpose with it. And now I'm, more open to speaking about it to friends, to family. I just feel a lot more comfortable, like in a better headspace about it. Same thing, training in, alone and in isolation is not fun. But that being said, those are kind of the moments where you kind of figure out more about yourself and learn more about yourself and where your head's at and where your emotions are as well. So it's an ability to, like, really tune into yourself and just dig deep and be as self-aware as possible. So it was tough for me. The beginning, especially of the pandemic, was do I really like what I'm seeing, what I'm doing, what I'm XYZ. So I took a step back. I actually am kind of transitioning into the out of like a corporate world into something that I want to do myself, where I'm kind of taking the bull by the horn, so to speak. But with that, my training and things like that, I've just learned that I'm going to do what's best for me. What I know helps me function on a daily basis, at my maximum capacity, just trying to be better than the day before. And again, when that comes into mental health, being better than the day before, not necessarily saying you need to be more talented or more skilled or be perfect, right? I'm saying, you want to be more, again, if it's self-awareness, be more self-aware, be a little more critical of yourself so that you can improve in that area, if you want to. And again, there's different variations of how people feel and different levels of the level of discomfort that people feel. Anxiety was definitely something that crept into my world over the last year and a half more than anything. It came out of nowhere kind of. So it was one of those things I didn't really know how to deal with in the beginning, but moving forward, again, family, friends, my father being one of my best friends, my fiance, my brother, teammates, I feel no discomfort going to them now and saying, hey, I need to check in, or, hey, let's chat. And, I have a ton of friends and a ton of family that are more than willing now to, especially, have that coffee that you were mentioning earlier, which go Patriots. They're more than willing to sit down with me and talk with me about what's going on and just to move forward. So, I'm not quite doing Zellyfit yet, but that sounds like something that could transition, in our area. We need something like that. So, no, I think the mental aspect of sport is massive. And until you're able to kind of get out of your own head sometimes and get those get over those roadblocks, sometimes it can hinder you and, it can really eat away at you. But once you've, started to attack that, and it's scary. I mean, it is scary. Like, don't get me wrong. I, sometimes am looking and thinking about these things and I'm like, God, it's kind of overwhelming. Maybe I'll just watch a Netflix episode or something like that. Or maybe I'll just put on a game and, instead I'm like, I'll just bang out 10, 15 minutes of writing or talking to someone else. And I feel so much better about it after the fact. And I feel better, more improved and like I am taking steps in the right direction. So
that's great.
Mental aspect's huge.
Brian, as you listen to Libby and Michael speak, not only as competitors, and I know you talked about the Abington Friends School. I know you work with kids of different ages as a coach, and you've seen people mature through the many years of this competition. It just sort of speaks to the kind of character and individual that's built from these sporting and athletic experiences that go beyond just what they're learning on the field. Obviously, Zellyfit and the rugby next generation of competitors is one outcome from the Maccabia. But can you talk to us about this community building and particularly over this last year and a half, where people have had to make decisions quicker, train under less than ideal circumstances, and obviously for you all planning for 2022 not have all the same assumptions in place?
Well, Wayne, one of the things overall that sports teaches everyone is an innate responsibility that they have. You know, that you can't just sleep till noon. You have to be part of a team. You have to be able to improve your own skills individually. In basketball, I always say, no offense to Mike, I always say basketball is the greatest sport ever, because you have to play as a teammate, but you have to be able to make a layup. You can make the greatest pass in the world to somebody else. If they can't make a layup, then it all goes for naught, sort of. We have an expression we use a lot. We say, win the day. You know, sometimes you can't look ahead, you know, the seeing the forest for the trees kind of thing, or the trees for the forest, you know. So we try to instill that mindset, win the day, worry about what you can control, and that's what's right in front of you in the short term, and that will pay major dividends as you move forward in whatever it is that you're doing. So that's something that's universal, I think, in every sport and from every coach as you're going forward. Yeah, and this last year, I mean, basketball is maybe a little different, and there's a lot of reasons, but like AAU basketball, despite the pandemic, did not stop. So kids who were playing basketball continued to play, you can argue the merits and the rights and wrongs, you know, till cows come home, as they say, but there was continual AAU tournaments everywhere around the country. So in basketball specifically, most kids who play basketball were still constantly playing. I mean, at our school, ourselves even, we had workouts for all our teams twice a week for the boys and for the girls. And ended up last season, our boys ended up playing. We did have a short, truncated season. Our boys in the varsity level played 8 games. Our girls played 11. Our soccer teams had 2 games scheduled. They both got canceled. Sorry, Lib. So there was no soccer at our school at all. We did play a few basketball games. And I am actually currently, besides my other roles at Abington Friends, I'm the middle school basketball and softball coach. So we had no middle school sports. That was all 86. So and then we actually did have like 2 weeks of practice and played 2 games of middle school softball at the end of the year, as at that point things seemed to be getting better. So again, ultimately, team sports, you have to do things, but we all, just as those guys were saying, you have to work individually at your craft to get better. You have to find the time to do it. You know, I always say, since generally I deal with 16-year-old kids, especially, you know, through my Maccabia career, I always tell them as they're going forward, the most important thing they need to accomplish is time management. You know, especially as you're getting older, you need to know when to sleep, when to eat, when to party, you know, when to get your rest, when to practice. You're going to want to do all the hundreds of things that make you, you know, a teenager at the time going forward. And the most important part is fitting them all in a way that you'll eventually get the most and the maximum out of all those things that you're doing. So find your sleep, find when to party, find when to practice, find when to play, find when to eat right, and then the rest will seemingly take care of itself.
Great. Dan, we had a couple of questions about specific sports, asking whether there were specific sports like baseball that are part of the competition. We had a couple of questions about, I certainly want to share the love with Haifa and other cities that'll be hosting different events. Can you just share, you know, what are some of the different events? Where do they take place in Israel, at least according, you know, to what the current plans are?
Happy to, Wayne. And I just want to add as a way to sort of tie up this point about the mental aspects of for everybody, not just athletes, but COVID and just general mental health, that organizationally our leadership recognizes that mental health is often not talked about and often under-supported, particularly in the sports world. And that we, as part of our delegation, intend to bring mental health specialists. We've appointed several who will travel with us to Israel to support our delegation, to provide an outlet for athletes who need trained professionals to talk to beyond just the support of coaches and managers and teammates. So It's not something that has often been a part of the sports world in an organized sense, but Maccabi USA recognizes that the aspects of talking about it that have always made it difficult need to be overcome, and so we're committed to that. So with that said, we are excited to be heading to Israel. We begin with a 6-day cultural educational program that will see much of the country for our U18, U16, and open athletes. And then with the organizers in Israel, there will be creating 3 hubs. There is a U18, U16 hub in Haifa. All of the delegations, athletes in every sport will be staying there. Maccabi USA brings 36 different sports, from baseball to judo to taekwondo to karate, rugby, soccer, squash that was referenced on here. So there are 36 sports that we bring. It's over 70 total teams. When you look at all the age categories and gender groups, it's a massive organizational task, but all of our U18, U16 will be housed in Haifa for the duration of the Maccabia. They created a magnificent hub. It's sports, it's social, it's community. The open athletes, as Libby referenced, generally will be staying in Jerusalem, living and competing in Jerusalem. It's an amazing experience. Again, they create mini hubs for the open athletes with activities and delegations from around the world, all staying together by sport. And then for the first time ever, they're creating a Masters hub in Netanya with specific activities and beaches and private beach and activities in Netanya to encourage all of our Masters athletes to stay together and build the same type of community that our younger groups do. And if you have any questions about sports and age groups, it's all on our website. And we are also more than happy to take phone calls, answer specific questions that anyone might have about if it's appropriate for them in their age group and their sport.
Great. Well, let's do a quick lightning round with the panel about just that. Anyone that might be sitting on the fence as an athlete, whether they're 14 and going to require parental consent, or they're 84 and going to require probably consent from their children, or if they have children, or friends and family, let's say. Michael, you just got off a plane from Atlanta and competed yesterday. Libby, you just got off a plane and are going to be competing in Israel shortly. What's the advice to someone that is starting to think about preparing? Because you don't prepare for a Maccabi, a week before, a month before. You've got to, as you know, qualify and prepare in advance. What advice would each of you offer? Michael, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, certainly. So first things first, got to register with Maccabi USA, right? Start the road instead of, like multiple people that, in the past that I've spoken with, saying like, oh, I'll get in shape first and then I'll do it. Like, just do it. Just sign up and, you won't regret it. Long days, long nights, and, like kind of I alluded to earlier, going to that kind of dark place to, just really push yourself to your absolute limit. Something we learned at the Navy SEALs was, you have an extra 40%, in your tank, and seemed like a lot, but, when you really put it like into perspective and you really use it, you really can get there. So we actually have our tryout coming up this week for the rugby down in Houston, Texas. So it was Atlanta yesterday. It's Houston, Texas from this coming Friday to Sunday. So hopefully we'll make that. And I would, my only suggestion would just be, get after it, start honing in on the skills and, working together.
Well, extra 40% the tank. You sound like my Peloton instructor when Libby, what would you say to your 17-year-old self or somebody?
Well, Michael, sorry about that. Michael said it greatly. I would just get after it, sign up, and keep your eye on the prize. It's a long process. And don't give up along the way and just keep pushing at it. know that the competition is it's fierce. It's one of the biggest sporting competitions that are out there, and you definitely want to prepare for it as soon as you can, as good as you can. And I would just say enjoy the ride, because it's going to be unforgettable for sure.
Brian, what do you want that person sitting on the fence to know?
Well, there's two things. Most of our basketball tryouts have already happened. However, if you are a 35 or over or a 45 or over basketball player, those tryouts are still happening the weekend of October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in Philadelphia. But I want to end my thing. I just want to tell my favorite Maccabi story. And I cry whenever I do it. So if I cry, you're going to have to excuse me. We had
We'll cry with you. We'll cry with you.
Make me cry, for sure.
A guy named Eddie Zucker, he was on the way to, he was a great player at Rutgers. He was on the way to possibly being an NBA player. He's about 6'7", and one of those, as we would say, just a complete beast. So Eddie played on the 1985 Maccabia Open basketball team. And as he was getting, I'm not sure exactly what year this was, but in between 85 and 89, at some point, he got in a horrible car accident and he almost died. He was in a coma for multiple months. And his story is, which was confirmed by many people, that when Eddie opened his eyes after being in this coma, he rolled over in his hospital bed, looked at his mom and said, will I still be able to play in the Maccabia games? So to me, that is almost the essence of what we've been able to do to people. People sometimes, I think of like Jewish athletics sometimes as it's not that big a deal and it's a bunch of Jews running around playing or something like that. But to me, that is the ultimate story that gives you the innate, how important this is to people who participate, how it touches them to their very soul, to where somebody woke up from a coma and the first thing they said was, will I be able to compete in the games next time? To me, that says everything about what our organization is, does, can be, and will do for anybody and everybody who's interested.
Okay, we're almost at the top of the hour. I want to give everyone one sentence or less. What is the headline a year from now at the 2022 Maccabia Games? What's the headline that you want to read a year from now? It could be personal, it could be national, it could be whatever you want. Who's going to take it first?
I'll go first.
Michael, go for it.
All right. I want it to be something along the lines of nations join arms in celebration of heritage and sport together.
Great. Libby.
Wow. That's hard to beat. I wanted to say that in light of everything that happens with COVID and anything else that could come up, that the Maccabia and Maccabi USA has managed to put together a community that has just shed light on sports and love and Israel, and that's what I hope to read.
Shed life on sports and love in Israel. I love it. Brian,
Yeah.
one line.
Well, I wrote headlines in the newspaper business and on television when I was a TV producer for many years. And just quickly, I just said, Maccabia, the past, the present, the future.
Dan, you get the last word.
Last word. So I would say that the headline is that the global Jewish community joins together in pride and in the 21st Maccabia.
Amen, amen. Thanks to all our panelists for being with us today. For those of you celebrating the high holidays, this is our gift for you for a little bit of either a distraction or a way to think differently about the inspiring people in our lives. Certainly there are many around us, and we need those friendships. We need those community building moments now more than ever. This is what we do. We won't be broadcasting on Wednesday because of Yom Kippur. For those of you celebrating, have a meaningful holiday. We'll be back on the 19th, and boy, do we have an episode that will be apropos to the times. It's about holiday leftovers. We've got a chef, two top chefs, one in Israel, one in Los Angeles, They're going to teach you what to do with all those leftovers from your breakfast or from your Labor Day picnic or from whatever holiday you still have stuff stuck in the refrigerator or the freezer. We're going to come up with actually something practical for you to do with it. We love having friends. We love being with you here, even under the worst of circumstances. Thanks, everyone, for participating. Have a safe rest of the weekend or start of the week in Israel, and start to the new year a healthy and happy to everybody from your friends at America-Israel Friendship League.
Shana Tova.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Happy New Year to all.
Bye all.
Been a pleasure.